There, it's going right.
It's recording now. It's recording now. Good. Just in the nick of time. So hello. Here we are. So excited this worked. So we're here with Maria Antonescu and Paloma. Hi, Paloma. And she is from Massage and Movement, and she is going, or massageandmovement.org is her website, and she is going to tell us all today about scar care for C-section scars and stuff, and hemorrhoid relief. And we're delighted that she's here. She has so much information. She is the lover of pelvises, the lover of uteruses, the lover of women and their bodies and menstruation and all sorts of good things. So Maria is definitely one of the people in our community that we look to a lot for help with all of our female issues. And we are delighted that you're here. How this works is everyone, when you come, you're all muted and we can't see your video at all because this is a webinar. So it's a little bit different than a normal call-in Zoom. And so if you have a question, what I'm going to ask is that you put it down below in the chat window or in the Q&A. And I'm going to be monitoring those the entire time to see if there are things that come up. And Maria is very wanting to ask questions, right? You like to engage and have questions, yeah. And so I think what we'll do is we'll just get started with Maria, and so she can start sharing all of her knowledge with us, and then we will take time for questions, and I'll be figuring this out. This is my first one, so be patient. Thank you, Maria. And I'm gonna make myself go away. Okay. Okay.
Thank you, Stacy. I want to throw out the plural of pelvis is pelvis, like there are little elves in your pelvis. And I just find that adorable. So yes, I am Maria. This is Paloma. I believe a lot of us are working from home now. And I always work from home. I'm a stay-at-home mom. And then I see clients here in the blue room in my home. And now I see people online. So I wanted to start with the scar care and then take questions and then afterwards go on to the hemorrhoid relief part and then take questions there. The reason why I want to do this is I feel like no one's really taught what to do with the scars that we have. And that's very unfortunate because scars are like the tip of the iceberg. Whatever scar you see, there is more scar tissue underneath, and it can affect your whole body. So think about a sweater you have that you accidentally got a pull in the knitting, and then it was tighter there. And no matter what you did, it just felt weird everywhere. Scar tissue can do that to our body. And what can happen, say we have a cesarean birth, and so our scar is really low here. One side typically is tighter than the other side. It tends to be the side that the surgeon stands on, which a lot of times is the right side because a lot of people are right-handed. So say our right side is tight. Our body will actually kind of curl around it to put slack in that area. So now our body's curled around it. And where do we feel that? We tend to feel it in our SI joints, in our low back. This is the low back, the sacrum, that is just a triangle shaped bone back here. Scars, abdominal scars can cause low back pain. They can cause digestive issues. They can cause shoulder pain. I mean, we don't even know what our scars are causing because we don't even think about our scars a lot of times. And cesarean birth scars, those are layers and layers. So I really think it's a disservice that we're not teaching women how to take care of our scars right away. There was a story about a woman who 25 years after her cesarean birth, she started getting back pain. And then one of my teachers released her scar and the back pain went away. A year later, she got the back pain again, and they knew right away to go to the scar. And then that woman learned her own self-care, and now she's been able to keep her back pain away. But it was 25 years that she started feeling it after her cesarean birth. So, amazing. I always like to start my classes with a little bit of anatomy because many of us weren't taught anatomy. This is very basic, but this is our pelvis. And if we had more of it, it'd be pelvis. In our pelvis, here's our pubic bone, our pubic symphysis, and then it's our bladder, and then it's our uterus, if we have one of those, and then our rectum. I just like to show this because a lot of times people don't know where their parts are. So when we have a pregnant uterus, and then it gets cut, the baby comes out in a lovely birth, and sewn back up, the uterus then will shrink back to size. And now that scar that's on the uterus is typically right up against the bladder. So sometimes the uterine scar can actually adhese to the bladder. So what that means is the bladder might not be able to expand fully. It might expand partway, and then the scar stops it from being able to expand. How people would feel that is the frequent need of urination, but not a lot coming out. Please don't do that. It'll knock this over. So frequent urination without a lot of urine coming out. It could also present itself in painful sex because during penetration, everything is supposed to move upward. The bladder doesn't move as much as the uterus does. The uterus is our most mobile organ in our abdominal cavity. So the bladder kind of stays put and the uterus needs to move. But if the bladder is adhesed to the uterus can't move, and then you're bonking the cervix, and cervix does not like to be bonked. And sometimes this pain is only felt with deep penetration, and sometimes for people it's just painful sex in general. One interesting thing is one woman who had a cesarean birth, after they had sewn everything up and they were replacing the uterus, they realized the whole uterus was twisted. So they had actually done their insertion into the posterior part of the uterus. So then they unwound it and put it back in. And so now for that woman, there's a possibility to have the uterus adhese to the rectum, which is a whole nother issue. If you can imagine everything we talked about the bladder being adhesed to the uterus, what would happen with the rectum adhesed to the uterus? Not fun. Okay. Feel free at any time to write questions in. So I guess I want to talk about pre-surgery. If someone knows they're going to have a surgery, I think it's really important to look at our nutrition, our movement, our whole lifestyle to help prepare us for that surgery. We don't always know that's going to happen. And everything we talk about is really good for all scars. I just know a lot of women who have cesarean birth scars that are never told how to treat it. But this can also be for appendix scars. It can be for scars on our perineum, anything. So in the first 12 weeks after the incision is made, focusing on nutrition is pretty important. Collagen is great, bone broth soups, things of that nature. Lots of minerals and nutrients so that the body can heal itself. The body's job is to heal itself, and we just need to give it the right tools to do that. Breathing is a great time. This is a great time to work on breathing, especially circumference breathing. That means our whole rib cage expands, kind of like we're opening up an umbrella a little bit. What can happen when we have an abdominal injury or incision is we get a little fearful of breathing deeply because we don't want that area to hurt, which I totally understand. But as we can and as things mellow out, focusing on that breath. Because when we circumference breathe, when our whole rib cage expands to breathe, then our organs get a massage. with every breath. And what that does is it keeps the organs mobile. Organs have mobility, where they should be able to move in the abdomen, and they also have motility, where each organ has its own movement within the body. And if they can't have their mobility or motility, they can't function properly. They're more likely to adhere to each other, and they just won't function properly. And we need our organs functioning. So if you want to practice circumference or torsion breathing, you can just put your hands on your rib cage and then just take a breath in, not trying to do anything, but just notice, where is your breath? Do you tend to breathe up here? Are you forcing a belly breath, even though you're sitting, and that's not normal? Our body does not work that way. Now try to have your ribs on your hands on your rib cage and let your fingers come apart when you breathe. Torsion breathing can be hard for people, or circumference breathing. I use them both interchangeably because we tend to be so tight. Our ribs tend to not have a lot of mobility between them because we don't reach above our head very often. We don't climb very often. So we have less and less movement ability. If we're not using all our different ranges of motion, we lose them. So tune into my class on Wednesday for indoor dynamic movement to get some ideas. But something that can help your torsion breathing is every time you walk through a doorway, just put your hands somewhere on the frame and walk through it a little bit. This is one I forgot to put on my indoor video for Wednesday. But each time, you could even be holding a baby and then walk through, and one arm does that stretch, and then the next time the other arm, and again at different angles. And that will help open up this area so that we can. So now, once we get our ribs able to articulate and expand with our breath, our organs are massaging each other with each breath. It's wonderful. We're less likely to have adhesions in our abdomen. If we happen to have an incision, we're helping keep the scar tissue down from what could be forming in there because we're getting blood flow. The body wants to heal itself, but it needs blood flow. It needs nutrients. It needs oxygen to be able to. We have such a sedentary lifestyle that most of us have pelvic congestion. So add pelvic congestion to an incision on your pelvis, and we just have this whole recipe for digestive issues, intercourse, all kinds of things that can stem from it. So torsion breathing, circumference breathing is pretty important in the long run, and it's great overall. Our brain needs blood, everything needs blood. So also in the first 12 weeks, alignment is something to think about. As the incision is healing, however you position yourself, the majority of the time is how the incision will heal in the body. So let me put that another way. If while your incision is healing, you're constantly slumped over, because that doesn't pull on the incision, it creates slack. Or maybe we're sitting all the time. That is how our tissues are going to heal. So say now they've healed, and then you come to one of my classes, and I talk about sitting up on your ischial tuberosities. You'd get there, and you'd be like, oh, that's not comfortable. That's pulling. That's weird. I'm more comfortable here, because this is where the tissues heal. So it'd be work to get back into alignment. So if while your scar is healing, or scar is forming, you can think about your alignment, think about getting movement within, I mean, don't go out climbing a tree right after your surgery, but do torsion breathe and do change your positions regularly and do think about, am I staying in one posture the majority of the time? Because that, again, is how your tissues are going to form, and then you're going to try to sit a different way, and it's not going to be comfortable in the future. And say you come here and you've had your scar for 25 years. There are still things you can do. Maybe you did sit the whole time while your scar was healing. It's not the end of the world. It's just a little bit more work, but we can totally do it. In the first 12 weeks, you can do hands-on love, visualization. Some people may not be able to touch their scar, not necessarily physically, but like psychologically. Some people are just like, nope, disassociating from that part of my body. And they will actually kind of cut off from themselves that part of their body. It can even be from like the abdomen down sometimes. And I think if we work with ourselves in the beginning, that cutoff doesn't have to happen. So say you have an incision and you don't want to touch it, fine. But where can you touch? Can you still touch your chest? Great. Touch your chest and talk to your chest. And oh, chest, thanks so much for letting breath in and for the movement. And then eventually, can you touch a little bit closer to your scar? It might be days, it might be weeks, it might be months, it might be years. But let's not cut ourselves off from part of our body. I know it was a big trauma, so just be gentle with yourself. Sometimes people can't touch their own scar, but they can have other people touch their scar. Or you could do hands-on, like energy work, where you're not actually, so I guess it would be hands-off energy work. So you'd have your hands above the incision. And again, in the beginning, some people who are disassociating or can't even touch it, they might want a hand way back here for the energy work. Totally fine, work within your comfort, and then eventually maybe you can get closer. Within the first 12 weeks, typically we don't work right on the scar. We wait till the scar is well formed before we start doing. I guess I'd like to go over a little bit of alignment for when the scar is healing or in life. A couple of big things when we stand is to have the weight back over our heels instead of our weight forward over our toes. Our front of our ribs, a lot of us have them kind of thrusted or up. If you can get underneath your ribs easily, they're thrusted. Just have those down so that they're blending in with the flesh. And it's a relaxing down. It's not doing a crunch to get the ribs down. Ditching the positive heels. So when we're in a positive heel, any heel that is higher than the toes of the foot is a positive heel. I'm not talking stiletto, but yes, those are positive heels. But all shoes pretty much have a heel, a positive heel, unfortunately, unless you're seeking out shoes without. So when we have a positive heeled shoe, it lifts our heel and it throws our pelvis forward. Throw is a big word. It pushes our pelvis forward, and then the rest of our body has to adjust to it. And that just sets up pelvic floor issues in the future, low back issues, all kinds of things. So ditch the positive heels, trust. And the other thing is when we sitting on our butt bones, our ischial tuberosities, and we want to sit more in the front of them than in the back. So when we sit up, ideally our ASIS and our pubic symphysis are in the same place. So if I would, were to put it up against a wall, these 3 points would touch at the same time. Are there any questions, Stacy?
I haven't seen any yet. Does anybody have anything that you want to ask? I think you're doing a good job explaining everything, Maria.
Great. Do you have any questions?
Would you sit on that chair behind us and show us what a sitting looks like? And would you, while you're sitting, show us where the ribs should be as well?
Yes, definitely. Okay. Let me move this closer.
And then talk really loud because you're coming in and out of, yeah, that's great.
So when we're sitting, ideally we're up on our ischial tuberosities here. And this is where I'm off of them. I can still feel them, but I'm on the back part. So, and this is a pelvic movement. This isn't a, oh, I'm sitting up now, oh, I'm sitting back. It's a movement here. It's way more subtle. And then for the ribs, they're just relaxed. And actually, they ideally are right over the ASIS and the pubic symphysis. So if my ribs were, you'll see some people and their ribs will be like way in front. And then for me, now this is more in alignment. I realize my shirt's all poofy. So ribs down, right over ASIS. Rib thrust, ribs down. Rib thrust, ribs down. There are a lot of people whose ribs and pelvis are stuck together. So they have a hard time moving the pelvis and the ribs separately, so it would look more like this. And that just takes practice to break those two apart. It's like the pelvis and the ribs are best friends and they want to do everything together.
I'm really glad that you showed that because I think a lot of people have that notion of rolling up on the sits bones, but like you said, they roll up and instantly those ribs come out and then they have low back pain or it starts hurting back there or it's exhausting because this.
Yes. So it can be hard for people because our hamstrings are so tight. So if my hamstrings are so tight that I can't sit here, but I'm making myself sit here, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt my low back because I'm using my psoas to sit here. In that case, I would just bolster. So I'm basically bringing my chair up. I'm even having something, I'm on the edge of it, so it's helping me roll my pelvis forward. So I'm letting gravity do it instead of me like muscling myself up. And if it's really hard, say you get tired of being in this position, like you're going on a long car ride, I bolster like this in the car. I don't use the back of my car seat. But if I'm in a really long car ride, I will bolster the back of my pelvis, this area, to hold myself up. I do not put anything on my low back. That will hurt long run. But on the pelvis, then it's helping my pelvis stay here. And once that's here, the rest of my body just fades out. It's not hard at all. If I have to hold myself here, that's hard.
That's awesome. I'm so glad you showed that. And I know like even in the car, I do that a lot because I can't hold myself there. So I've got all sorts of props in the car. Someone had a question here with this. And do you have any tips or tricks on how to be able to keep that posture while holding the baby instead of, you know, bringing the hips forward or bringing them to the side or all those distorted things that we do?
Yeah, so if it's sitting, you can totally prop yourself. Lots of pillows, lots of rolled up towels to help put your body in that position, and then you can stay there. I guess keeping moving is pretty huge when we're holding a baby. Yes, a lot of times we'll like hold a baby and we'll go out to the side. And then to bring everything back in, now we're using our arms. In order to be able to use our arms long term, we're going to have to keep doing micro adjustments so that we're using different parts of our muscle fiber. And it'd be really helpful if you're not the only one holding your baby. That's huge. Get a village, get a community. I don't think one person is meant to hold their baby all the time. So another thing we tend to do is we'll like make a shelf out of ourselves and hold our baby here. Because we're on our ligaments, it's easier. We don't have to use our muscles, but oh, it's bad for the low back. Oh man, now my uterus is prolapsing. Why? Because all this downward pressure happening. So we bring this back, and again, now we're using our arms. And it's only gonna work if we keep moving periodically. And it can be little movements, it doesn't have to be huge. And having somebody else hold the baby, because it's not sustainable for one person.
I was also thinking that some of that also comes from just awareness, right? Like if people don't know any different, then they're hanging in those funny places, but just even having that awareness and then start being mindful about it and practicing it to get that muscle in our bodies, and to that awareness, I think makes a huge difference. So them even knowing this information that you've given them is huge.
And we get tired.
Yes.
It's a lot of work holding an 8-pound, 12-pound baby, especially if you're the only one doing it. And plus you're doing it and cooking for your other kids. I mean, you're tired. You are gonna just do whatever you can do to make it easier. So that's where community comes in. And I know that we don't all have it. So we have to, it's just unsustainable for us to do it all the time. With Paloma, we didn't have a stroller purposefully. We didn't have a stroller. We rarely did any sort of baby wearing, because I had so much pubic symphysis pain and incontinence. And once I learned all this information, I was just like, I am changing my life, because I'm not going to pee myself for the rest of my life. People kept telling me that's part of being a mom. I was like, no, I don't think so. So I didn't do that. Instead, I carried her. And it was a lot of work. But I constantly kept moving my arms. I was so strong for a while there. But now I don't carry her anymore. I'm still strong, but I was like, wait. My husband, he would carry her for a little bit, and he's like, how can you do that? So, but if you start as their infants, or even before that, have like a bag of flour that every day you add a cup of flour to until your bag's like 8 pounds while you're pregnant. So you're like building up muscle. And then the baby comes out, and as the baby grows, you're still carrying it. You'll just adapt and get up. Total sidetrack. Okay, so this is the part where I wanted to get into the actual scar massage. One thing I'd like to throw out is castor oil. This is the brand that I use. It is great for scar tissue. Castor oil has, I forgot the name of the chemical in it, but it's only found in castor oil. And it helps keep the scar tissue more mobile. It helps bring lymph to the area. Lymph is our garbage disposal system in the body. It helps do the cleanup work, and if our lymph isn't flowing, it's no good. The castor oil is awesome for scars. I personally do not like coconut oil for ingesting or topically. I know some people have asked me, oh, I just put coconut oil on it, and try it. It is antibacterial, and I don't know. I wouldn't use it personally. Maybe it works for you. I have heard good things about vitamin E oil, but castor oil is phenomenal. So, massage. What I'm going to be showing you, you don't need oil for this type of massage. What I would do is do this type of massage, and then afterwards add castor oil, and then go to bed. And castor oil can stain. So when I apply castor oil to my abdomen, I then take a cloth and wrap it around my abdomen, pull my clothes down, and then go to bed. If you have a hard time touching your scar, there are roll-ons of the castor oil, or have somebody else do it. So this scar massage is, I'm gonna make a scar here. This is an inhibition technique. If you can't see, let me know. So the first thing to do, this is now my abdomen, representing an incision on my abdomen. So the first thing I would do is place my hands on my abdomen and just do some breathing. It's a great time to thank the body. Wow, you healed. Thank you. Thank you for growing a baby. Thank you for, you know, digesting food. Just a lot of gratitude. And once you're ready, and listening is another thing you can do here when you're thinking. Is there anything that you really need worked on today? Or what can I do for you to help you heal? You'd be surprised what your body will tell you. So we can warm up the tissue just by like dragging with our hands. So it would look like this. And we're just warming up the whole abdomen. It's very gentle. I would do this directly on my skin, but it also works through clothes, this part. Next, you would get on the scar, and you would do piano fingers. So you're just gently pressing each finger. And what we're noticing, we approach our tissue with curiosity and gentleness. And what we're noticing is, oh, this part's really hard, or oh, this part feels really cold. This part feels really hot. We're only ever working on a scar that's well formed. I want to throw that out there. We never want to accidentally reopen the scar. So once we do the piano fingers, we're just going to gently sink our fingers in, and we're going to move the scar from side to side. And we're going to notice which way the scar wants to go, like which way is the easiest. For me, my skin goes easiest this way. So I'm going to keep it here. I'm going to keep it here for a few seconds. Maybe it feels good to keep it here longer. We don't want any pulling, tugging, ripping sensation. This is a very gentle technique that gets great result. Eventually you might feel a melting here, and then you can go back to midline. And from here, we're again gonna sink in gently, and we'll go up and down. Which way does our scar want to go? Oh, it goes really easy down. So I'm gonna hold it here. And it might seem like you're not doing a lot. It's a very gentle and effective technique. I only teach people very gentle techniques because any sort of like ripping and pulling of scar tissue can cause inflammation and then more scar tissue to form. So once we do these different directions, we can stack them. So, okay, the tissue still likes to go here. Now I'm gonna keep it over here. Does it like to go up or down? Oh, it likes to go down. And then we'll stay here. I don't know, maybe 10 seconds, maybe a minute. This is where you need to pay attention to your body. Do some nice deep breathing. You might feel a melting, you might feel heat, you might feel just, oh, I just had a nice deep breath there. I don't know why I had to take that. And then you can relax the scar. We might feel a release in the tissue by our breath, just, oh, that sigh may have been actually our tissue releasing. So just to recap, we did piano fingers, and that was mostly to notice. Notice what you notice. And then we played around And you can do this in a few different ways. You can do it directly on the incision. You can do it below, then above. There's a lot of room to play around with this. I'm just giving you the basic technique. So we felt, which side does it want to go to? It wants to go over here. You let it release there. We felt, does it want to go up or down? You could even add diagonal. If you can play around and be creative, just no tugging, pulling, ripping of scar tissue. Once you are happy with that, you'll probably feel a little bit warmer. You're getting more blood flow. You're bringing lymph to the area. Then you can do clockwise circles on the abdomen is a nice way to end. Clockwise circles, so you go up the right, over, and then down the left and around. It's like there's a clock on your belly. This is the way our colon moves in most people. The majority of people, our colon goes this direction. And then at the end, you can just place your hands on your abdomen, relax, listen, thank the tissues again, thank yourself for taking this time to take care of you. And then just feel what you feel. Maybe your body says, wait, I need a little bit more work right over here. Or maybe it says, hey, could you just rub my shoulder a little bit? Or maybe it says, thank you and good night. Really tapping into what is your body. And the more we tap into that, then the louder the body can be. And we can just follow our intuition. So that's the hands-on technique. Are there any questions there? And after this, then we'll go into the hemorrhoids.
Does anyone have any, or does that feel pretty good from what you're learning?
I thought I saw something pop up.
Well, it says, and I tried to clarify, it says, what about thrust to aligned to slump? And I didn't know exactly what that meant, if that was where we addressed where you were the sitting.
So a thrust aligned will feel slumped.
Oh, got it.
And the slump is because our shoulders are so tight. Yep.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense that that's what that is. Mm-hmm.
So
and that's the thrust part, right? Is we're always trying to get our shoulders back, and we're always trying to get like we look like we're standing, and so then we're thrusting our breasts forward and thrusting and then shearing.
Yes. So go through the door, keep your ribs down, go through the door each time at a different angle, and that will start to open up this area. Yes, you feel slumpy at first. It feels gross. And then it gets better, because the rest of the body is feeling better.
Great. I'm glad you knew what that meant. Thank you. That's good. Let's hear about those hemorrhoids.
Right. Also, another thing that I just feel like people are told, put topical cream on it. So I'm looking at hemorrhoids from a body worker's stance, and also a restorative exercise specialist. What hemorrhoids are, they're swollen vessels in the anal canal. They can either be internal or external. A lot of people have them, and they're not necessarily always painful. Sometimes when we wipe after we poo, you might have a little blood on the tissue, and it might be a hemorrhoid that bursts, and you never knew you had it. What's happening, what's causing the hemorrhoids the majority of the time is liver congestion. So the liver has a portal vein that becomes varicose. So hemorrhoids are a varicose vein. The main thing for hemorrhoids, general hemorrhoids, not just hemorrhoids during and after pregnancy, is liver care. It's what type of food are you eating? Are you eating food? Are you eating boxed? Stick with food, like things you can recognize. Are you drinking coffee? I hate to tell people not to drink coffee, but at least cut back. super interesting thing I just learned, slightly off topic, but still all together with liver congestion, is if a woman drinks a cup of coffee, 1 cup of coffee for 4 days in a week, her estrogen goes up by 20%. That's a lot. Estrogen is what causes our breast tenderness in our cycle. It causes our PMS. It causes our bloating in our cycle. Like, that's huge. So liver, love your liver. Decrease liver congestion. You can do it with castor oil packs, or I just do it topically, then wrap in a cloth and go to bed. It can help detox the liver, but what's the point in detoxing the liver if you're just gonna then go drink a diet Coke? You can only offset so much. Diet is huge. There are herbs that can help with liver congestion. You can find a lovely herbalist, do some research on that. Hydration, staying hydrated. A lot of us are dehydrated, especially people who drink caffeine. Caffeine is a diuretic, so it will get things out of us, or sugar. When we ingest sugar, that also makes us pee because it's kind of toxin to our body, so our body's trying to get it out. Constipation can be a cause of liver congestion, which then can make hemorrhoids even worse. So any sort of like pushing down on our pelvic floor, especially if we already have a varicose vein down there from our portal vein, from our liver, everything goes back to the liver. And then we're pushing down on it with our poop, and our poop is hard because we're not drinking enough water or eating enough vegetables, cooked vegetables, more so than raw. Then we're just gonna make the problem even worse. Other things that can constipate us: dairy, wheat, bananas, dried fruit, things like that. Again, hydration can help with that, and definitely check out the liver. And vegetables. Eat vegetables. Cook vegetables. So with constipation, part of the issue is the pushing out of the poop. But if pushing out the poop can cause more hemorrhoids, think about pushing out a baby, especially coached pushing out a baby. So you're not necessarily listening to your body's signals of when it's open, but just trying to cram that baby out. It can cause issues. This is the pelvic floor. This is the inside. Here's the front, the pubic bone. Here's the sacrum back here. Here's the anus. Most of us do not have this wide of an opening, just while we're sitting around. The vaginal canal. Right in here are the most common areas to really stress our sphincter muscles of our anus. And we can get little knots in there. And that's what I'm going to help you learn how to massage once we're ready for that part. Another thing I want to throw out that can be very helpful for hemorrhoids is our potty posture, how we go to the bathroom. Again, we don't want to push it out. We want to relax and let the poop flow. At the same time, we don't want to just hang out on the toilet. Because the toilet has that hole in it, our pelvic floor is just kind of hanging out over this hole, and it can cause a lot of downward pressure. It's fine for when we're there voiding, but it's not a place to hang out and avoid your family. I totally understand needing your own space. The bathroom's great for that, but not on the toilet. So don't just sit there and scroll through your phone for a really long time, because that can cause more pelvic floor issues. If you've ever heard of a squatty potty, they can be really helpful. When you go to the bathroom, I can give you an example. And if you haven't heard of a squatty potty, there is a great YouTube commercial. Just search squatty potty unicorn. It's awesome. So when we're on the toilet, it's helpful to have our knees above our hips. It helps relax a muscle that kinks off our anus, our rectum, and keeps the poop from coming out. So we want the knees higher than our hips. One thing to watch for is once you get your knees up, does it make you tuck under? If so, that's not helping in the long run. We want to still have a neutral pelvis like we talked about earlier. And if we bring our knees up and it tucks us, no bueno. So watch when you get your knees up, how high can you go with keeping a neutral pelvis, and then stay there. Eventually, if you keep doing this, you'll get more range and you'll be able to go high. But don't just, oh, Maria said to do this, and then you're all tucked and you're like, why isn't this helping? So slowly work your knees up. And you don't have to buy a squatty potty. You can make your own. You could just put books on the floor near your toilet. Or my husband made ours out of wood. So you can be creative. Tight clothes can make hemorrhoids worse because it's increasing the pressure in our abdomen. Same with the rib thrusting that we talked about, or the pelvis thrusting when we're standing. I think we're on to the massage part, unless you have any questions.
You just barely touched on it right now of the pressure. And I think that it might be good to let people know, because I think we create pressure all the time without realizing it. And so I think even introducing that notion of the importance of keeping that pressure down.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So you got the sphincters to blow out.
Great visual there, Stacey. I like that. We are walking bags of pressure. We have different cavities in our body, the thoracic cavity, the abdominal cavity, and the pelvic cavity. And they are under pressure. Under pressure. And that's the way it needs to be. But when we do certain things, it can create more pressure. And then that has to go somewhere. So think about just stuck in your stomach. All those organs have to go somewhere. Where are they going? They might be going down into your pelvis, creating a downward pressure and prolapse-like symptoms, maybe stress incontinence. So when we laugh, our urine busts through our ligaments and comes out. It could be going, that pressure could be going back, and maybe we're having herniated disc issues. It could be going forward, and maybe we're having diastasis recti issues where the abdominal muscles start to separate. It could be going up, and we have a hiatal hernia, or we have acid reflux. I mean, there are a huge variety of things that could happen because that pressure has to go somewhere. It's like squeezing a balloon. It has to go somewhere. And for every person, it'll go slightly different places because we have different lives. We do different things with our bodies. We have different habits. So some of the work that I do is help to balance that pressure so that it's not pushing out into places that shouldn't be dealing with it. So when we rib thrust, we are creating interabdominal pressure, a bit of it. We are creating probably downward pressure into our pelvis. That's where a lot of people feel it, and a lot of people with diastasis recti, rib thrusting is huge. It's one of the first things I look. Sucking in a stomach is another thing a lot of people do because as women, we want to have flat abdomen, which I just want to throw out there. A flat abdomen has no biological benefit, only a social one. Having a flat stomach, you're more like that pulled in, you're more likely to have prolapse issues and stress incontinence. Embrace your pooch. That's what I like to tell people. Embrace your pooch. If you look at a toddler running around, they have a Buddha belly. until they start climbing, and then it's all like pulled up and in because that's when their core needs to activate. We don't need to think core activate, our core should just do it. So when we're telling people, pull your navel in towards your spine to protect your back, why would we evolve to need to do that? It's not a thing. Our abdomen needs to be dynamic. It needs to be able to function on its own. I don't need to be thinking, okay, activate now. It's not. I feel like I'm going off on a tangent. But abdominal pressure can make people have constipation, all kinds of things. So when we wear tight clothes, it creates pressure. Does that answer your question, Stacy, or am I kind of?
No, I think that's excellent. I was just thinking that how often that's just such a complete unknown for people of the importance of it and all the things and the ways that it manifests. So I just thought that was with hemorrhoids and talking about pressure, that was something to throw in there that could give people a huge nugget that they might not have yet. So thank you.
One thing I want to throw out is everyone touch your belly button and then cough. Cover your cough. Where does your finger go? Where does your belly button go? When you cough, does it go out? Does it go out and down? Does it go in? Does it go in and down? If you're doing either of those, out, down, the in, down. I mean, in, we ideally want it to come in, maybe even in and up, not in and down, and not out. What happens sometimes is we're so sedentary, like we don't even know how sedentary we are because we are so sedentary. If we were to keep track of all the times we're just sedentary, maybe that would help people get a clue about it. But we're so sedentary that we're so tight, and now when we're coughing, we're not activating the right places. Maybe our muscles are just so tight that certain ones aren't working. So when we're coughing and our cough is going out or it's going down, we're creating a lot of pressure out or down, and that's like a recipe for diastasis recti and prolapse type issues, that heaviness in the pelvis. That's that downward pressure. So I work a lot with people's breath as well, and then go through the work of helping someone breathe differently or relearning how to breathe. Torsion breathing, like we had talked about with the scar work, is what's needed in order to help us breathe the right way. If we're so tight in our ribs, then yeah, our pressure can't really go up and move our ribs when we cough. So it's going down and it's going out. So movement is okay. The moment you've all been waiting for, how to massage your anus. So when we have a baby, it's a lot of pressure in about this area. And the muscles, especially right in here, around the anus, can get little knots in them from the trauma of it all. And interestingly, there are two layers of the anal sphincter muscle. And if someone's having, say, fecal incontinence, typically it's the deeper anal muscle that needs more work. So right now I'm going to show you how to work the more exterior muscle. So when we do have a little knot in an area, the anus should open up kind of like a circle. If there is a knot in an area, the anus might be opening up more like an oval, or maybe even part of it is stuck open, which can lead to fecal incontinence. It could lead to more hemorrhoids, things of that nature. So how we want to work it. It's up to you whether you want to use lubrication or not. I think it's fine without, but you know, if you do, castor oil is great, or use what you'd like. I would recommend trimming your fingernails. So vaginal canal is here, anus is here. I think this is easiest on the toilet with a squatty potty. But once you understand this technique, play around with different positions, maybe sideline. For some people, it would even work on your back, depending on how long your fingers are. So what we do is we hook our thumb in our vagina. It doesn't have to go in very far. And then our finger goes on the anus. And now my hand is going to represent the anus. So thumb is vagina, finger is anus. And first, we just sit. Might as well thank this area too, or just notice what you notice. Take a few breaths. Not everyone has been taught to touch their anus, so there might be some trepidation in that way. It's a part of your body. It's actually really cool if you learn about the anus. It is an amazing mechanism. So anyway, our finger's right on the hole, and you might find that it is already slightly open and your finger can go in a little bit. And I want to point out, first of all, that the outer tissue is pretty soft, so you will sink in a little. It's very kind of like your hand in a way. So once we're here, we're going to start doing a light pinch. Pinch is a wrong word, but we're going to bring our fingers together just a little bit. And we're just feeling, oh, is there an area here that's really tight? Oh, is there like a little ball in here? And if there is, we just imagine like we're melting snow between our fingers. It's nothing hard. It's nothing that we're forcing ourselves to do. It's just a very gentle relaxation. So we're just feeling this whole area as much as we can. Once you get to the more posterior part, you're going to have to use your fingernail and push it away. Again, if you're doing this in a different position than on a squatty potty on the toilet, then, I mean, just do what you have to do to be able to get the whole anus. It's more the part that's closer to the vagina that tends to get the knots in it, but you might find it back here as well. And again, if you find a spot in the back, you just lightly press your fingernail into it and imagine it melts. Do a lot of nice torsion breathing. I want to throw out that we do not work directly on hemorrhoids. You can work around them, but don't poke a hemorrhoid. You can be very creative with your positioning. You can even be creative with your technique. This is just one technique. Listen to your body. You might find areas of your anus that are stuck open. You can gently invite them to relax. You might even find, again, here's your anus, that this area wants to be massaged. You know, this is part of your pelvic floor. Let me show you on this pelvis. So here's your sacrum, here are your ischial tuberosities, those sit bones. So maybe you just come in here and work. You might find one side tighter than the other. I really want to invite you not to feel embarrassed about touching yourself. We need our pelvic floor to function, to have a happy and healthy life. And the more you listen to what your pelvic floor needs, the better. And yeah, we'll bring you into the future of hopefully not sneeze and keeping the organs where they need to be. But are there any questions about any of that?
Does anybody have anything? I learned a ton again. I could listen to this quite a few times. I'm waiting for the live demo. Oh, that was great. Does anybody have any hand raising or anything?
Looking over if I have anything else.
I think you did a good job.
Cool. If, say you're having issues with constipation and hemorrhoids, try to do this anal massage before your bowel movement to help things relax and open up, and then hopefully the poo can flow. Yeah, and if you're dealing with a lot of constipation, you might want to look into making stuff as well.
I know at yoga, you had talked one time too about the not pushing at all when you poop, and how hard that is as a new mom and as a parent at all, to try to find the time to go to the bathroom and not force it, but how important that is to wait until that doorway is open and then let it flow rather than spending time pushing and adding all that extra pressure. And I thought that was good too.
Yeah, I learned that in massage school. I believe it was Ayurvedic saying, like if you're pushing your poop, it is a symbol of disease, like that there's dysfunction going on. But yeah, as a mom, you're just like, I just gotta go get this done, push it out. But if we do that, we don't always get a complete release, and that can go into a rectal prolapse, you know, where the rectum starts to pooch into the vagina, and that's a whole nother.
That sounds awful.
There's hands-on techniques for that.
And I can only imagine that as we get older, this compounds, right? And so then the sooner we figure it out, the better.
It doesn't have to compound. I mean, if you're walking,
thinking of like straining to push and not eating well and that kind of stuff. I'm thinking like that is going to compound. So like the sooner that we can stop doing those and change those habits.
That's why I mean it doesn't have to compound. Just right now, add some more vegetables, cooked vegetables. It's amazing how much that can change the digestive system if we have the right kind of fiber. I'm not talking a fiber one bar. I'm talking have some lightly sauteed broccoli with your, I don't know, rice and beans is what we have a lot. So. But adding a lot of vegetables to it, it can make the poop flow so nice.
We know.
And I do have a child that has a lot of constipation issues, which is probably why I'm so interested in this. But she has other issues too. But that's just one of the ways it shows up. So maybe that's why I'm so into the abdomen constipation. One thing I want to throw out for mamas is I love these Mama Moves cards. Great way, very body positive. Great way to see, oh, look at all the different movements I can get while I have a kid. And then on the back, it talks about the alignments as well. But I sometimes gift these to people, and then they can put up like 1 or 2 cards around their house to just help remind them of things, and then switch out the cards.
Yeah, those are nice.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, Maria's coming back on, what day did I say? Wednesday. Another lunchtime engagement with more of this movement, this dynamic movement around your house that we're all stuck in right now. And like we're seeing, that movement is going to benefit us on every level of our health. So I'm excited to see that. I always enjoy listening to you. So thank you. Website is massageandmovement.org if you want to get a hold of Maria that way. And then on your profile and stuff has your other information that we have on Facebook. And so checking out that. And just reminding you, we have tons more classes this week. And it would be awesome for us if you could help by sharing it with your friends and coworkers. And this is not just need to be Duluth, right? This is countrywide. People have babies, bums, all the stuff all over the country and can benefit from it. And these things will also be recorded for afterwards too. And so you can share this lovely video with your mother-in-law who might be having hemorrhoid problems, or your father-in-law. But anyways, all of these are going to be out there, which is super fun. I do want to say that we have added a donate button to the website because this has become so much bigger than we thought it would be, and accruing so many more like iCloud storage and everything else. And so if you feel moved to donate to the cause, it would be very appreciated by all of us. So thank you, and thank you, Maria. Thank you all for coming today. I hope you all learned a ton and go home, try out some new stuff. So thank you. We'll see you on Wednesday.
Have homework.
Right. We're going to check in.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maria. Bye-bye.
Bye.